Okay, welcome everybody to Wall Street Reporter's next Super Stock live stream. Today is October 29th, 2020. We have with us again a returning favorite, CloudMD, DOCRF over the counter, DOC and the TSX Venture. The CEO is Dr. Issam Hamza. Dr. Hamza, welcome back.
Thank you, Jack. Thanks for having me again.
And yes, so those of you new to our program, again, our goal is to present you, stocks which we believe have 10x to 100x upside potential. Cloud is well on its way to doing that. Stocks start off at about 40 cents US when they first appeared in late July. It's doing a lot better now. We'll find out if this is going to be our next 10 bagger. But again, we're looking for companies that are going after three things: multi-billion-dollar market opportunities. The companies are at key inflection points right now, and they have multiple catalysts in place which can create that value and really create that transformational growth. And we're actually seeing that all three of those things happening with Cloud. I think probably that's why the stock is it's really performing so well. It hits kind of all those criteria. So today, Dr. Hamza is going to present for about 20 minutes. We'll go through the slideshow, bring you all up to date, and then we'll open up for Q&A. We have a lot of great questions that already came in last night, and we'll open up to the live questions as well. So with that said, Dr. Hamza, take it away.
Thanks, Jack. So, I mean, some people might see parts of this as being a repeat of what we've said before, and some new investors might see this for the first time. So I'm going to go through it. I won't go through every slide, and I'll probably elaborate on some other slides along the way, and then I'm happy to answer the questions after that for sure. A little bit of a disclaimer in every deck. So again, a little bit about us and kind of how we got here and why we got here and where we're going, basically. A few things is we are a company built by doctors and practitioners, understanding the healthcare system, really trying to empower the doctors and engage the patients for the very first time as part of their own healthcare outcome and so on. And we have over 100 years of medical experience on our team. That's really, really important for a few reasons. One, we understand the system, which is really important. We understand the customer, which is often the doctor and the patient. And also, it's a lot easier sometimes to talk to companies that are in the space that might want to join our team and share the vision with us when we are also part of, we're like them, basically. So it's easier to talk to them. The space is big. In US alone, 3.5 trillion, probably about 4 trillion in North America, going from almost all paper, a little bit of digital to, much more digital and now virtual as well. And we'll talk a little bit about where we see this going in the future, during COVID, post-COVID, and kind of 5-10 years from here. Our focus really is this patient-centric approach. It really is a switch and a turn on the way healthcare has been delivered all these years. Historically, it's been very siloed, where the patient was almost an afterthought, and the doctor in the clinic, the different doctors and practitioners in the different clinics were all siloed. And we both have, because we built this platform, it's our platform, we already have the infrastructure, we're able to now offer it on both the B2B side, SaaS revenue, as well as B2C, directly to consumers as well. We're growing very quickly, as you've seen kind of with the numerous press releases we've had and the different puzzle pieces we'll talk about. And we're growing across North America right now, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And we're extremely well funded. Again, had another very successful raise. We have, I think, over 50 million in the bank right now, and we'll talk more about that strong pipeline of acquisitions as well on top of that. And despite our move and the fact that we've moved up, we're still at a significant discount to the competitors in the space, the comparables in the space as well. So we'll talk about that as well. Why are we here? We're here, we've been doing this for years. So we've been talking about this for years in terms of how the healthcare system is broken. I went into medical school and into medicine with the understanding that the way we were practicing medicine when I entered was not the vision for long term. It was kind of a problem that needed a solution. And the problem was that it was extremely inefficient. Costs were going up. Patients were getting older and sicker. There's more chronic disease. 90% of all healthcare spending in North America is spent on patients with chronic disease, and the numbers are going up every year. And so that is something that all governments around the world understand, and they've been trying to find ways to get around it. Historically, they really thought very low tech, and they said, let's just make more doctors, because the more doctors you have, the better access you get. You catch things earlier, and that fixes the solution. That fixes the problem, over time. It didn't really work out that way, because what happened was doctors that graduated didn't want to work where they needed to be. They tend to want to work at, closer to home. They want to have shorter hours. They want to have lifestyle themselves, which I don't blame them. And so it caused this cost to go up more without solving the problem of lack of access and so on. Very inefficient use of resources. Again, I can't tell you how many times I in the clinic, I'll see a patient, I'll refer them off. So I have to go from a digital source on my computer, my electronic medical records on charts for that patient, print something out so we can fax it, old school, to a specialist or to a hospital, which then uploads it into a PDF onto their system. I mean, it went from digital to paper, to paper to digital again in a very bad format. Really bad use of resources, very inefficient. I never knew who was in my waiting room. I didn't know if they were there for a prescription refill or if they were having a heart attack. And that's just not right. And so those are things that are being fixed by what we're doing here. And the doctor supply and accessibility we talked about already. So what happened was that the answer was always going to be technology. And we've always said virtual care. And we went public for that reason as well. We got frustrated as private individuals trying to solve the problem ourselves, using third-party over-the-counter software that had no interest in innovation or integration. And so we took control of that. And what happened with COVID is that all of the barriers disappeared kind of overnight in March. So the patient barrier of adoption, the patient would be willing to do that instead of going into their neighborhood, walk-in clinic. Would doctors be willing to do it? And if they're not being paid for it, and post-March they are being paid for it, and would governments pay for it? And they all do now. Because they see the value of it, and that's kind of the new future that we'll talk about as well. So the barriers disappeared, and obviously our company went ahead probably about 10 years in our business plan. Immediately it became a bit of a land grab, and we're growing extremely, extremely fast right now. So a big overview of what we do and how we did it basically is we believe in this patient-centric model and also in empowering the doctor. Because we built this platform has the ability for the patient to be part of the team and to connect to all parts of their, let's say, the ecosystem, healthcare ecosystem. We believe in a whole person approach. That person is complicated. You can't carve out a mental health issue, and you can't carve out a physical health issue, and you can't carve out, these issues are typically intertwined. And when somebody gets an injury, partly it's physical, but mostly it's mental in terms of recovery. And so if you don't work as a team, you get horrible outcomes. And so the whole idea is to have this patient in the middle connected to the whole healthcare team, not just the primary care doctor, in these hybrid clinics that we own as well. And we'll talk about that, but also the pharmacist and the specialists and the counselors and the physios and the nutritionists. We even have a patient education tool that we talk about, because the more educated the patient is, the better the outcome. So we've took control of this and said, let's provide that full ecosystem and connect to that one patient for all the resources they need to get better. And really and if you ever get anything out of our company and about where our mission is and where all these announcements we do in terms of acquisitions, just take that one takeaway, is that we are creating the full ecosystem for that one patient in their healthcare journey, basically. And so that's kind of where we get from. Because we built this platform, we do provide it directly to consumers, this whole ecosystem and so on, and we collect the revenue on that. But we also provide that platform for doctors who use it across North America and pay us SaaS revenue, recurring revenue, subscription revenue, kind of on a monthly basis to see their own patients. And so the great thing about that is they'll use the software, they'll bring their patients onto our platform, and that provides more patients in our ecosystem as well. So this is kind of an overview of what we did. Really quickly on one of the solutions we have, for instance, is an app, and this app connects directly to the electronic medical record, or EMR, of the doctor, and provides 24/7 real-time online booking. So there's no more waiting until Monday morning, trying to call into your doctor's office, finally getting through, making an appointment, waiting a few days, taking a day off of work, crossing town, sitting in the waiting room with people coughing around you, and then the doctor's running 45 minutes or an hour behind. You finally get into even a smaller room, and then you're seen for 5 minutes. You take a prescription or a referral or a lab rec, and you do the same thing again somewhere else. And it's a waste of time for everybody involved, including the doctor, because they didn't know why you were there, like I said before. So the reason they're running behind is the patient behind you might have had a heart attack or a breakdown, and you never know. And so it's incredibly inefficient. And the new hybrid clinics that we created, we use 100% virtual triaging as the way to make sure that the people coming in are the people who need to be seen physically. Otherwise, you can be seen a lot more efficiently virtually. And that's kind of the new normal that I'll talk about in the future, is really focusing on that part of it. Part of it was also showing the medical chart and sharing that with the patient, and having the lab rec and so on, the labs, secure chatting back and forth, because we're not allowed to text or email patients for security reasons and privacy reasons. Connecting health monitoring devices. I mean, they're incredibly smart now, and they're getting smarter with the Apple Watches, and they have oximeters now and ECGs and all that. And so connecting that and getting some of that rich data and being able to share it with your team. 2 AI products, one we created with IBM Watson, with IBM on the IBM Watson platform. We own the IP for it, and it's a virtual assistant. So it's that person at the front desk that typically you call. Now is an AI agent, can do everything that clerk can do, anything clerical at all, from giving directions or hours of operation or how to prepare for your exam. And then a virtual nurse as well. So the ability for you, when you make that appointment on a Sunday night, not only will you get instant confirmation and automatic reminders with no labor involved, but that virtual nurse will also ask you why you want to be seen. And you'll say, you know what, I don't feel good, I have a headache, and it'll ask you the same questions I would or a nurse would. How long have you had it for? Any nausea or vomiting? It's these medical algorithms that we're all taught in medical school. And then at the end of it, it'll be able to triage you. So this comes back again to triaging. So if it's something that you shouldn't wait for the appointment, it'll just say, you know what, go into your nearest emergency or call 911 right now. That's something you need to be seen. Or it'll make the appointment, let you go to the appointment, and in the appointment, the doctor will already have the full history. They'll have a differential diagnosis with about a 95% accuracy rate. And they'll have, even the treatment options based on current guidelines before they even said hi to you. And then even the telemedicine piece of it is really important as well, because it's interesting, because this part, you have to make it very intuitive as well. We don't want a patient sitting in front of a phone, not being able to use it, a camera, because the doctor's running behind, and you can't use the phone for anything else because you're sitting in front of a camera or in front of the website, with the camera on. We made it so that you can continue taking care of your kids or working, doing whatever you want. When the doctor is ready to see you, they initiate the call, and you'll get a notification. You touch the notification, and the doctor's right there, and they can e-fax the prescription right to the pharmacy of your choice, or you can get it delivered from one of the pharmacy partnerships. Hybrid clinics, I'll talk about this really, really quickly. So the future of medicine in terms of brick and mortar was already moving towards more efficiency, meaning the mom and pop, solo practices were already going out of business because it costs way too much. There's so many costs kind of behind the scenes in terms of sterilization and a bunch of different things that it doesn't make any sense for a practice to work on their own. Practitioner. So it's now these bigger clinics, not bigger even, I mean, it might be a medium-sized footprint, but instead of, let's say, 3 doctors in a 6-room clinic, you can now fit, 9, 10, 11, 12 doctors and practitioners and other allied health professionals, because each one of them only works in the clinic maybe a day a week or a day and a half, and only sees the patients they have to touch. Otherwise, what happens is it's all virtual. So they're working from home, seeing the patients virtually more efficiently. All their incomes go up and all their lifestyles get better from our history of our doctors and so on. And so it's a win-win for everybody involved. It creates better outcomes, gives you better access. It treats you with almost concierge type service, which is really new in North America, where you get to have contact the same day and talk to a doctor or clinic and be able to get your prescription without having to wait many days and so on. So these are much more efficient. Because we built this infrastructure, we built this platform, and we have these doctors and we have all these healthcare workers and the ecosystem, we're able now to start offering it to corporations that need that service, let's say. And so one of the corporations that is in dire need of doctors are pharmacies. And the reason is because pharmacies, historically, if you go to a pharmacy and a prescription is expired, or you have a bladder infection and they know that, the pharmacist knows that, but they have to send you away, you often don't come back to the same pharmacy. You might run out for a few days because you can't get into your doctor. And it was a problem. And so now we partnered with the biggest chain in Western Canada, owned by the Jimmy Pattison Group. And we put these kiosks in their pharmacies where a patient can now just go right into the consultation room, swipe their card, touch the screen, see one of our doctors, and get a prescription while they're there. And it captures that. We also have been able to launch something called CloudMD On Demand. And what CloudMD On Demand does basically is like a kiosk link, like on demand, but from their website or their apps and so on. Now, why is that important? Amazon. So Amazon's coming. So Amazon is really moving quickly in the healthcare space. They bought PillPack, which is a prescription. They package it for you and deliver it to you in little sachets. So you don't have to think, you just take your morning dose, afternoon dose, and so on. And then they bought a virtual nurse company called Health Navigator in the States. And then they launched something called Amazon Care, which is telemedicine. And then they rebranded something called Amazon Pharmacy, and you'll see it on ads everywhere now. It's called Amazon Pharmacy. So the online pharmacy prescription fulfillment business is coming. And these brick and mortar pharmacies don't want to become basically like Blockbusters were. And so it's something where they're moving to e-commerce, and these guys are probably the most advanced that I've seen, where you can, get all your grocery shopping ordered and get it delivered to you. But now you'll be able to see a doctor and get a prescription delivered with your groceries, let's say, right? This cart, really quickly, we have it. It has like a stethoscope, otoscope, oximeter, and so on. You're able to do, as a doctor, a full high-definition exam from thousands of miles or kilometers away. And you can see everything in high definition, and it's been used extensively in First Nation communities, remote communities, oil rigs, and so on. Really quickly about our infrastructure, part of our infrastructure. So our EMR is from Cloud Practice called Juno. Just this one EMR alone, we service about 376 clinics, and we have over 3,000 practitioners and almost 3 million patient charts. We also bought an EMR in the States, and we can talk more about that after this, about why we did that. And they have about 5.5 million patients in the US and operate in, I think, 35 states in the US, and I think have about 800 practitioners as well. So we have a really, really good footprint across North America. And why that's important, again, is not only it's great software, but also that we get our foot in the door with the customers we're going after, which are the doctors and the patients. So we basically acquired a lot of doctors and patients from this, and now we can offer them our full suite of services and ecosystem of different things we offer basically to them. I'm going to skip this part, except to say that we do have a reseller agreement with a company that is connected to Department of Justice and Homeland Security and CDC and so on. So we're pretty excited about that, and we'll have more news eventually. SNAPCLARITY. Now, mental health is something that I need all investors to really pay attention to. And so we were talking about mental health and the importance of virtual care in mental health for years and years and years and years. And we've always had in our deck, if you notice, we don't talk about COVID much here. We've always said that mental health disease and mental health care was always going to be the big driver for virtual care. It's probably the one thing that I would say to you that you sometimes get even better outcomes virtually than in person. And the reason, if you think about this, it seems like a weird thing to say. If you are an anxious person or anxious teenager, the last thing you want to do is leave the comfort of your home or your room and go to a waiting room with 20 people around you. You think they're staring at you, and you're anxious to begin with. And then they move you into even a smaller room where you might be claustrophobic, and they're rushing you because the last person had a heart attack and they don't have much time to talk about your anxiety or your depression. Horrible experience. This is much more comfortable. You get, I think, better outcomes, better compliance for sure in the young people. And so mental health was always going to be a big driver for our company, and we've done that from the beginning. We've really focused on that. SNAPCLARITY is an app that I would say that it's something that I would say you should try. Download it, check it out, and we're pretty excited about it. It has kind of a unique proprietary algorithm, asks you questions, gives you a dashboard, and then can connect you to one of 1,500 therapists across the country that will give you kind of the one-on-one in kind of an omni-channel way, where you can have telehealth, you might be able to text with them, during the day in real time and so on. So it's really, really exciting. They do have direct to individuals, but more importantly, this is kind of the cornerstone of our enterprise model that we've really launched recently. So all those little puzzle pieces, if you guys are following our story, are snapping into the SNAPCLARITY acquisition. So we got medical confidence that gets you into a specialist faster than historically, where you're guessing what the wait times are and so on. We have the most recent one with HumanaCare and so on, where again it can give you the employment assistance program and so on. So now we have these opportunities with very big, sometimes Fortune 500 companies, where they tend to pay a lot of money for little pieces of care for their workers or their employees. And so now we can provide them everything. So instead of just having one vendor for mental health care, one vendor for the EAP program, one vendor for rehab, physical rehab, we can now offer them all those things, plus even primary care with CloudMD on demand in one package. So now you can kind of see all these puzzle pieces coming together and why we're announcing them the way we're announcing them. And they start clicking in, oh, that's the same customer, that's the same Fortune 500 company that now has a one-stop shop. And so that's kind of another thing that I think people would get out of what we're talking about. Another great thing that we're pretty excited about is IMD Health, which is kind of a leader in patient education. Amazing library and great access to a lot of different diseases in different formats. And when you educate a patient, you get better outcomes. That's very well known. The problem is when you do it in a clinic, it's number one, very time consuming. And the patient only retains about 20% of what you said as a doctor once they leave the office. By the time they get home, it's 10%. If they go to Google, the accuracy rate is about 3%. So there's a reason that accurate information is really important. And so they have very accurate information that's coming from like the Mayo Clinic library and some other proprietary libraries and so on that they have access to. And they're able to make it so that they're a trusted contact for many big companies around the world. And they have partnerships with pharma as well. So now pharma has the ability to produce, let's say, a video about their new puffer, so that when the doctor is seeing you talking about your asthma and, hey, I'm going to give you this prescription and you need to know how to use this because it's a little bit different in the way you use other puffers, watch this video, and there you go. So they get half their revenue from subscription, where hospitals and larger chains and so on will pay kind of a yearly subscription. And then the other half, they get it from sponsorship from the biggest pharma companies in the world. Again, producing sponsored content, a little bit of sponsored content. I'm not going to talk about this right now. It's running out of time. IBM, we talked about. Our team we're very proud of, and this is only part of the team that I can fit on these slides. I mean, really, it is something that makes me excited because I can delegate a lot, and I have confidence in the team to do a good job and find good opportunities. So you already know about my history a little bit. Family doctor over 20 years, really been involved in technology and growth and kind of the future of healthcare delivery for over 20 years actually. But we have other people as well, like Dr. David Ostro, who ran the biggest health authority in British Columbia. We have Dr. Mather as our president. We have Mark Kohler, which if you're in the space in Canada, you understand Mark. He's come from multiple wins previously. He was executive chairman of QHR when it was bought by Loblaws. He's on the board and chairman of VersaPay right now, that's being bought out. So he's had multiple successes and buyouts, and he's really, really helping us right now. Karen Adams, we're extremely excited about coming over, really part of the mental health kind of pioneer in Canada, Morneau-Chapelle, and she's really leading this enterprise team for us, and we're focusing a lot of attention on that space right now. Julia, again, superstar in investor relations, head of investor relations. Dr. Goyle, again, heading the corporate development team in Ontario. But we also have strategic advisors as well, and these are all people who didn't have to do anything with us. I mean, they are so busy and so successful on their own right that they joined us because they share the same vision. Dr. Snowden is incredibly well renowned around the world, and you can kind of see a little bit of her history here. Art Mesher, again, incredible repeat successful buyouts and so on. Don Simmons, if you know the name Simmons, the founder of ClearNet, that was bought by TELUS for I think $6.6 billion, and so he's been extremely helpful. Mr. Arnon, again, a very successful lawyer in Ontario, again, incredible amount of success in the space. And Raj coming from Rogers, and in particular the 5G program, which again, I'll leave it at that, but I mean, 5G is the future. And if you think about telemedicine, virtual care, and a bunch of other technology, that's going to be really important to talk about bandwidth and so on. Multiple revenue streams, we've kind of hinted to it. So we have the SaaS revenue, we have the B2C side, we have directly to businesses with the telemedicine, as well as directly to consumer with telemedicine, and so on. But the one thing I want to show you very quickly is that even though they're separated by this little space kind of between the bars, they're really not separated. They're all connected. And so a lot of the different things we've done and a lot of the acquisitions we've made connect a lot of these verticals. So we just demonstrated this way to make it simpler to understand, but they're all connected, and that's actually the exciting part. Just looking at the time really quickly. Revenue, these are our consensus estimates from the analysts. We have 4 analysts. 16.7 million for this year, 41.1 million for next year. Our current run rate from the companies we've announced so far, I think, is north of 30 million. So I think we're pretty comfortable here. And we still have over 50 million in the bank. So we're comfortable with these numbers. Comparables in the space, I talked about a lot of them already. Teladoc, keep an eye on them. They went from getting as many virtual episodic care visits as possible, moving into now chronic disease, which we talk about all the time. And so they bought In Touch for 600 million, I think US. It's a Quebec company. And then they bought Livongo and merged with them again because of the chronic disease. And watch for them because they're going to move into brick. They're going to get some sort of solution to, let's say, have brick and mortar footprint as well, because they understand chronic disease is really the future, chronic disease care. Well Health, great company, great leader in Hamid, and we've talked about them many times before. Amazon, we talked about already. QHR, we talked about. One Medical, again, footprint, concierge type of services in the US, interesting company. Last slide here, Jack. Obviously, our stock's done really well recently, but we think it's only the beginning. This is a transformational like a time for the industry, and I've only said inflection point twice in the history of our company. And the first time I said it, I think we were trading down at around 60 or 70 cents, and that was kind of an inflection point in our company history. And I think we're at another inflection point in our company history at this point. We have 4 analysts. They're tied up because we just did a bought deal. So they haven't been able to come up with any more research in the last few weeks because of our bought deal. But the current target, the consensus target is 2.8, but we think that will be changed over time as they're able to start reporting again. And that's it, Jack, if you want to join back in.
Okay. Let's put the last slide back on the screen so people have something to look at.
Oh, you can't see it right now?
Oh, no, it's good now. Yeah, right now it's perfect. Okay, so we got a couple of minutes here. We got about 80 plus questions that came in. So I think next week, I know you're gonna be back on. We're gonna have that live chat. So, and that's gonna be dedicated purely to questions. So everybody watching right now, please check your email next week. Dr. Hamza will be answering all questions. So let's kick off with questions that came in last night. So Graham is asking a very interesting question. In terms of new acquisitions and acquisitions in the pipeline, are you finding competition or bidding war type scenario occurring? And if you do you find your platform being more desirable by these other companies as a bargaining chip?
It's a great question. Is it becoming more competitive? It is. Having said that, the fact again that we have doctors and practitioners on our team and we come from that world has helped us numerous times in winning those bidding wars, and a few times, quite a few times actually, we were actually outbid, and they still chose us because they kind of share the vision of the future with us. And oftentimes they ask for more stock than cash, which again is a weird thing when you start talking about acquisitions. So you know, the makeup of percentage of stock and cash is often very heavily in the stock pie side of it, because of the fact that we want them to share our growth with us and be rewarded for really growing their business. We don't want people walking away. The great thing about our acquisitions, all of them, is that not only did we get a great asset, but we even got a greater team. And if you know anything about kind of the human capital value, that's really very valuable. To find, you know, good people who know their space and good operators is really tough. So we're getting that with these acquisitions.
Okay. Graham is asking another question. What would a global expansion look like for CloudMD? Can you discuss any possible locations you would like to break into first, such as Middle East or South America?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're focusing on North America, but I'll tell you that because of what we built and what we have and parts of our company and the technology that we have, it translates really well around the world. And so, you know, stay tuned, and you'll probably see certain parts of our services or platforms available in other locations. The reason I'm being careful kind of how I say it is that it's not a main focus for us, but it's an easy translation into what we do with very little risk, right? So we don't like taking a lot of your risk capital into situations or areas that we're not very familiar with. So this is a way to expand something we already developed. It's very low risk to offer it in another location and get the revenue from that and then the profit from that. And that's what we were doing. So you'll see kind of more about that.
Okay. Actually, Anton is asking a related question. He's asking, Germany, Australia, and UK are also lucrative markets for telehealth. Any chance to expand into those countries?
Again, same answer. We're not going to elaborate on locations right now. They're all saying very interesting name places that we've talked about before. So I mean, we'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. Gary is asking, how big of a footprint will this HumanaCare acquisition give you in the USA right now?
Yeah, so HumanaCare is mainly focused right now in Canada. So that is something we're focusing more on Canada. Having said that, the announcement we made with the Mississippi clinic, yeah, there's a reason we picked Mississippi, and there's a reason we picked those operators and what we're doing in that area. And so what we're doing up here in Canada is going to translate very well to what we're doing in the States, let's say.
Okay. We have Luis is asking, to the extent patients who have used telehealth need a level of education in order to work well, I guess, to use it, what is your plan for those patients who lack that education? And what is your plan for those patients who don't have access to this technology?
So education on how to use the platform, or education on their disease? I think that's the question. So
I guess it's kind of both. Yeah, like how do they, let's say somebody's older, they may not know how to use it.
Yeah, our services are available in whatever format you want. If you want to use an iPhone, Google phone, the iPad, or web-based like a website, it's available in all formats. So it doesn't really matter how you connect. It's very easy to connect. If you have no access to any internet, that's probably a bigger problem, but more than just even access to telehealth. So I think most people have access to telehealth or to some form of internet connection. And as long as you have an internet connection, you have the ability to do this. And if it's saying about bandwidth, again, that's only going to get better with time and with 5G and all that. In terms of patient education, this is really the secret sauce right here, the IMD Health. This is something that is going to be already started anyways, integrating into all our platforms, whether it's our EMRs, on both sides of the border, to all our offerings in Canada and the US, to our virtual care as well, so that a doctor virtually, when they're talking to you, can actually share a screen and show you what your disease is and so on, and with one button, share that with you through a secure email as well, so that you have it and you don't forget what they said. So it is something that is extremely exciting for us, and we're going to have more about that as we keep integrating it into all our things, all our offerings.
Okay, Brandon here is asking an interesting question. How quickly will the cross-sell opportunities between the acquisitions happen, and what's the plan to do so? Maybe he means the integration. How fast is that going to integrate?
They started already, let's just say. Like, I mean, when we announced something, I told you this, Jack, before we started here, but when we announced something, it's after a long time of due diligence and talking about cross-culture and everything else. So the ability to cross-sell to the same customer starts immediately, because it's already been discussed during the negotiations and even before we sign. So that's already started. And what he's getting at is basically Humanacare's customer and Medical Confidence's customer and SNAPCLARITY's customer and so on are all the same customers sometimes, right? Some Fortune 500 companies. So to be able to tackle that same customer with multiple cross-selling abilities is a big synergy, but it's a great offering that really makes us very unique in the space, very, very unique.
Okay, Kia is asking, will there be an option for nurse practitioners to have positions within the clinics that CloudMD will be providing?
Yeah, we already have nurse practitioners in our clinics.
Okay, Jeremy is asking, is the consensus estimate of $2.80, is that US or Canadian? Canadian, right?
That's Canadian, yeah.
Canadian, okay.
But that's outdated, because we've gone from bought deal to bought deal. So they're going to be updating once we close. I think we close the end of next week.
Okay, so Douglas is asking, how much more capital do you think that you will need to raise as the future unfolds? And is dilution constantly on your radar as you achieve and strive for cash flow positive scenario?
Yeah, I gave out my practice to do this. I'm one of the biggest shareholders in our company. My exit is your exit. So I'm very, very aware and careful with dilution. And so every one of our acquisitions has been with that in mind. Having said that, we are in a position right now where we're incredibly well funded. We have a strong pipeline of acquisitions, and we always have the investor in mind whenever we do announce anything, whether it's an acquisition or a bought deal, because we are biggest investors ourselves. We self-funded this thing for like a year and a half internally, friends, family, and a core group of investors and so on. So we're totally aligned with you guys. Having said that, just so you know, you can see, sometimes with our deals that we've done it in a very in a great way. I mean, since we don't have any warrants attached to them, the prices have gone up as well with these bought deals, and so we're very careful.
Okay, so we got, I think we got time for about 3 more questions. Philip was asking, how much of your growth will be from industry growth versus market share growth?
Okay, I think I understand. So the industry growth is massive, and so he's just saying it's like, well, the tide lift all boats basically, and you're seeing the tide lifting a lot of little tiny boats that probably shouldn't be lifted. So it is lifting everything right now. But having said that, if you look at our growth trajectory, we're definitely making ground on a lot of our comparables in the space. And we didn't get into this with a narrow vision of, good enough, right? I mean, we are planning to be, one of the biggest companies in health tech and healthcare in North America. That's really our focus here. So we're not doing this for just being second or third or good enough.
Okay, so it's basically like the analogy of a fast car on top of a fast moving train.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of analogies you probably use.
Okay, so Mark is asking, is it true that CloudMD could match Well Health revenue by 2022?
I'm going to leave that alone for now, but I'll go back to what I just said on the last answer, is that we didn't get in this to be okay or just okay.
Okay, so let's actually I'll close off on this question. It's actually kind of a sneaky question. I always like to ask you, what's it going to take to get the stock to, $40? What are the catalysts? So this guy, Jermaine, is asking, what does success look like for CloudMD?
And I go back to the fact that I gave up my practice to do this, and I did it because I think the success means that everybody wins in this space, right? So the patients, for the first time, have almost concierge type level of executive care without paying for it, which is unheard of. And doctors have lifestyles and able to shut off and have a life and go on vacation and not worry about running businesses and so on. And governments are saving money because of efficiency in the system. That's my win-win-win on the care side of it. In terms of what happens with the company and where we grow, I mean, we have a market cap of 440 million right now. Honestly, I think with the size of the market and where the space is going and where we're going, I'm confident that we'll continue to grow, rapidly over time. I won't give targets in terms of what we'll be. But the final thing I'll leave you on, Jack, is that I also have some market experience in terms of market, psychology and trends and everything else. And typically you see a lot of consolidation kind of in two spots, right? You see consolidation when no one cares about an industry, and you see these guys come in who are well-funded and buy a lot of distressed assets. And then you see a lot of consolidation as things get hotter and hotter and hotter, as bigger companies start outbidding other bigger companies for assets to get into a space that's really growing. And you're starting to see now some very big names like the Teladocs and the Amazons and the Googles and the Apples of the world coming into this space, and they don't tend to grow organically. They tend to acquire, right? And so we're going to make sure that we have enough of a footprint and are big enough that we satisfy our own vision, but we're also big enough that if there is something that happens, that we're well positioned for it for our shareholders.
Okay, yeah, for any of these, for the Amazons of the world, to write a check for, $2 billion is like, that's nothing. It's like a snack. So
yeah, and Teladoc paid 600, and this is like a long time ago too, before it even got even hotter, but they paid 600 million, I think, for InTouch out of Quebec, right? And I don't know how much they paid for Livongo. I can't remember how many billions US. But yeah, I mean, it gives them a footprint immediately for sure.
Okay, I'm gonna ask one last question because a couple of people have asked this and it's actually kind of relevant, timely. Michael is asking, there is a lot of hesitation in the forums and message boards about the upcoming election. Will CloudMD's efforts be hindered one way or another depending on who wins?
No, I mean, if the biggest cheerleader for telehealth was Trump in March because he saw the value of saying that. But the actual, and if he wins, great. I mean, whatever. I mean, I'm not going to pick sides on this forum. But if Biden and the Democrats win, I mean, who ends up paying a lot more for healthcare, than the Democrats, right? and talking about a universal healthcare and paying for everything that you need to have access of care. I mean, that's their mantra, right? So I think we're good either way.
So win-win situation. Okay, so all right, so we got a lot of questions. We'll have you back next week. Everybody, please check your emails. We'll have Dr. Hamza answering. Probably we'll spend an hour on Q&A next on the live chat. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you. Okay, bye.